Which here. As most of you know, I'm the former Chief Executive Officer at Prologis and the author of Transfluence, a book about the opportunity we all have to make a transformative influence on the lives of those that we serve. I'm back for another live chat today. I think we've had some of the most thoughtful voices guiding leaders to be more human and more effective over the last year. And today I'm joined by Annie McKee. I've really come to love Annie. She has an amazing background. She's the author of 5 books, the most recent of which is called How to Be Happy at Work. And I know there's a lot of interest in that. The Power of Purpose, Hope, and Friendships. She's also a senior fellow at the University of Pennsylvania, PA, my state that I was born and raised in. She teaches and leads the Penn CLO Executive Doctoral Program and the Med Ed Master's Program there. And she is also a renowned leadership speaker. She is a terrific person. She's an advisor to many top global leaders. And she believes that people can and do want to thrive in their workplace. We all do. And that they can discover answers to even the most challenging environments and dilemmas. And we all have them in our workplace and what we face in our organization. Annie, it is awesome to have you on. Thanks for being here with me today.
Thanks so much, Walt. I'm glad to be here and welcome everyone.
Well, and I have to ask you, being from Pennsylvania and being on the board at Penn State, it's obviously great to speak to somebody from Pennsylvania. How long have you taught at the University of Pennsylvania?
That's a good question. I've done 2 stints at the university. One started in sort of the mid-90s. I taught at the Wharton School for a number of years and did some other things in the university in the president's office. And then I left to write some books and start a company and to do some wonderful things. I continued teaching all that time, though, maybe 1 course a year or something like that. And about 9 years ago, just an opportunity came up to lead this doctoral program. It's for mid-career executives, 40, 45, 50-year-old executives who want to get a doctorate while they're still working. And I'd been traveling a lot. Well, you know about that. I was, on a plane 100 or 200,000 miles a year, and I was kind of ready to stop that. So I decided to go back. Yeah.
Well, I have to ask you one question from somebody that lives in the Philadelphia area. Do you like Philly cheesesteaks?
Of course I like Philly cheesesteaks.
I like them with sauteed onions, peppers, all that good stuff. I just love them. Every time I go to Philadelphia, I got to have a Philly cheesesteak.
You have to.
Absolutely. All right, so let's dig into some of the questions. Annie, you've now written numerous books on leading with emotional intelligence. You talk a lot about emotional intelligence and creating a happy and productive work environment. Before we get into thoughts that you have on all that, can you just tell me how you got into this? How you got interested in this type of leadership? What drives your passion in this area?
That's a great question, Walt. And I think our viewers, our participants today can relate to what I'm about to say. Most of us don't deliberately choose our career at a really young age and then pursue schooling and then get into it. Most of us have a vague idea of what we want to do. We kind of know some things that we love to do. Maybe we go to college or graduate school and get a first job. And then it's kind of serendipity. Opportunities come up and we take them. And that's how it was for me. I didn't go to college early. I went in my 30s and then went straight into graduate school and found myself teaching at a university and consulting, things I never thought I would do. I loved it. And while I was doing that, I became really interested in why our organizations just weren't functioning as well as I thought they should. What's wrong here? And having a psychology background, I was interested in the people side of the question. And I started looking at, okay, let's look at these managers. Let's look at these leaders. What are they doing? They're having an impact on people. I personally, at one point, had a terrible manager. Terrible, right? I mean, this guy was super toxic. And I realized that, the quality of the leadership in our organizations, whether it's a first line supervisor or a CEO like you, Walt, it matters. It affects the quality of our life. It affects how we behave at work. It affects our effectiveness. And it even affects our home lives. So I really wanted to dedicate some time, and it's turned out to be a lot of time, to understand what can we do to help people be more whole and healthy and productive and effective and fulfilled at work.
Yeah. I always say that the bad leader can make a good, a bad leader can make a good company bad, but a great leader can make a horrible company shine.
It's so true.
There's no question leadership matters. It really, really does. So you started to talk a moment about your background. You were born in England. I think you were raised in New York, or upstate New York, I believe. And as you said, I think on your bio, you took the road less traveled. I mean, you decided to go to college after you had 3 children. You were a single mom. You were 28 years old. You certainly did not have it easy in your career early on. How in the world are you such a positive person?
Well, uh, I don't really think we're born positive, or with a positive or a negative outlook, but I do think we can cultivate it. Right. And even in my toughest times, when money was scarce and it was really, really hard, I guess I always had a belief that things could get better. I knew I'd have to do something to make that happen. It wasn't going to just fall out of the sky. But I do believe that hope, a sense of a positive future that's out there for us, and not necessarily a clear vision, but an idea of where we want to go, what we want to do, how we want to live our lives, that inspires me. And when I do get down, because Walt, I do get down, we all do, and this last year we all have quite a lot, I think, I remind myself, you got to look toward the future. Let's think about what we can do here to make this better, even if it's just get up in the morning and put on a nice blouse or something and smile at somebody who I pass on the street. Just doing the little things, Walt, it makes a difference.
Yeah, it really does. And it's contagious to watch you. It really is. And get to know you, and just such a positive person. And I do think if we have that attitude, that mental attitude about ourselves, we will succeed over time. There's no doubt about it. So let's talk about your book. In the book, which is again called How to Be Happy at Work. I read it. I loved it. And you immediately start off with the idea that life is too short to be unhappy. That's what you said, quote unquote.
Mm-hmm.
You say that to be happy, you must run towards something.
Yeah.
Meaningful work, a hopeful, inspiring vision of your future. You got to run toward it.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on your thinking there?
I would love to. And you and I kind of think alike, I think. Well, we've had some really great conversations about our philosophy. And I think we both believe that life is a treasure. And I think everybody's learned this last year, those of us who have suffered through the pandemic, that life is actually precious and it can be short. It's something to hold close and try to make sure that every moment of every day we are doing the things that make us feel fulfilled. And I don't mean that in a selfish way. I don't mean sort of the grasping or even achievement or accomplishment. I mean doing things that make us feel like we're part of something bigger than ourselves. And if we feel that way, here's the thing about feeling that way. When we feel hopeful and inspired and fulfilled, people can sense it and they want to be around us. They want to follow us. So if we happen to be in a management or a leadership position, or a leader in our family or our community, that sense of deep commitment to being part of something bigger than ourselves, to having impact in an important and meaningful way in whatever we're doing, whether it's waiting on a customer in a store, or leading a large organization, or teaching, or seeing patients in a clinic, whatever it is, if we feel that that's big and important and it fulfills us, people will gravitate toward us and they will want to be with us. They will want to join us in our goals and help us accomplish our goals, which, oh, by the way, are goals that support everyone.
So it's really you need to be intentional about it, and we're going to talk a little bit about that feeling of positivity and hope in a moment. But let's look. Well, I think we all want to be happy at work, but let's face it. Probably some of the people watching today think, no matter what she says, it's just elusive to me. I don't like my boss. Or you talk about in your book some traps, and personal traps, i.e., feeling like we're overworked and kind of in this loop that just it's endless. Sometimes you talk about traps. People focus maybe too much on ambition and compensation and being disappointed, or even feeling helpless because of their boss, whatever it might be. But then you do say this, and you say, in most cases, it is in our power to change. And you talk about emotional intelligence, self-awareness, and those things. But, I think if I were listening to this, I'd say, okay, but how? How is it in my power to change? How do I take control of the situation, especially if I feel like it's out of control?
Right. Those are really good questions. And I got into studying happiness kind of through a back door. You mentioned earlier, I've written a lot about emotional intelligence and leadership. That's my primary area. But a few years ago, I started feeling really frustrated because no matter how much we were learning about what people can do, leaders, managers, employees, to create a positive, productive workplace, I didn't think we were moving fast enough organizationally. And I'm talking about around the world, big organizations, small organizations. We just weren't moving quickly enough. So I asked the question, what are we missing? Right? What are we missing? And I happen to have done a lot of research in a lot of companies over the previous 4 or 5 years. And I went back to all those interviews. There were thousands of them. Obviously, I had a team who did the research with me, but I looked at a lot of them and I asked the question, what are people telling us they want at work? And it was clear as day. People want to be happy at work. They want to feel like they're part of something that's exciting, part of something where they can accomplish their goals, part of something where they can actually fulfill their own life ambitions. And yet, most people don't feel that way at work. So you're right. Anybody listening today, if you right now, or you've had periods in your career where you're really pretty unhappy, you are not alone. So I started asking the question, doing some more research, asking people, well, why are you unhappy? And of course, you get well, it's my boss, it's this toxic culture, my targets are too ridiculous, whatever, right? Those are all real, and we need to work on them. I don't want to ignore that. Working conditions, poor management, unrealistic expectations of human beings at work. We've got to do something about that. But we're not going to fix that in the short term. What we can do is to look inside ourselves and ask the question, what am I doing to myself to support me in feeling better every single day in my workplace? There's some great research done by a colleague named Amy Wisniewski. She's at Yale. She studied people in all sorts of professions, from janitorial jobs to professional white-collar jobs, et cetera. And she asked the question, like, what's meaningful to you? How do you understand your work? And some people, according to her, and I really agree with this, see their work as just a job. I go for 8 hours, I get a paycheck, some benefits, I go home, right? That's it. Not very fulfilling.
Right.
Other people sort of are on a career path, right? Which is better. It's like I'm doing this because I want to go here, or I want to get there. But I can tell you, after coaching executives for a couple of decades now, there is nothing sadder than waking up in your 40s or 50s and realizing you've been chasing that brass ring every day of your life and it just hasn't fulfilled you, right? And then there are people who really see their jobs as a calling. And then you might say, well, then you must need to work for the United Nations or be a doctor or something like that to feel like your job is a calling. But our research, Amy's, mine, many other people say no. We can experience our job as a calling by understanding what it is that we do on a day-to-day basis that is truly meaningful to ourselves and other people. And I'll give you an example. A friend of mine had a really tragic situation where his child was in the hospital with cancer months at a time, months at a time. And, mom and dad would be there overnight and things like that. This went on for years. And of course, they're very grateful to the doctors and the nurses and the wonderful team and all of that. My friend told me, late at night, this man would come in and he was cleaning the room and cleaning the bathroom and this and that. And he discovered through conversations with his son that this man was the most important person in that hospital to this little boy. Okay. So my friend started talking to this man, and, this man said, I see my job as just really finding ways to make these kids and their parents happier and healthier. That's my job. I'll clean the floor. I'll do that. That's my job. That's my task. But my real job is making people feel good. So that man transformed his attitude. And I'm not saying anybody should stay in a job that maybe they don't feel is what they could do. Maybe he went on to do and be something much different later on. I don't know. But I know myself, Walt, for many years, I was very poor. I cleaned houses. I did all kinds of things to make ends meet. And I remember telling myself, you can either sink into misery here, Annie, or you can reframe what you're doing. And that's what we need to do. We got to reframe what we're doing and then find opportunities to do the things that make us feel good about what we're doing.
So let's drill into that a little bit, because I think you're talking about your attitude, but you're also talking about creating purpose in what you do. Yes. So in your book, you said, when work is an expression of our values and we have a positive impact on something we care about, we're motivated from within, and we don't need others to push us or beg us to do our jobs. I love that. It's a great line. So at Prologis, however, we built warehouses.
Yep.
Right. So, and we were proud of them. We built them and they were great warehouses. But think about, okay, well, how does that create purpose, right? Building warehouses, right?
It's a good question. I've talked to somebody who worked for a large food company. They plant and harvest potatoes. Well, where do the potatoes go? They go to McDonald's, right? And you can find purpose there, and you think about the climate and all of that. Right. Okay. So the big noble purpose isn't always in what the organization does. Although, if you're working for an organization that does something that you feel is wrong, you're not going to be happy. Okay. Right. But we human beings find meaning in everyday activities. For example, maybe I'm working in Prologis and I'm a project manager. Well, maybe I'm not that great a project manager and I want to get better. So I've challenged myself to learn how to use the software, how to negotiate the deadlines and this and that with the team, how to manage the inputs and the outputs. And over the next few months, I see myself getting better at this. That gives me a sense of purpose, right? Learning does. Or maybe you're the kind of person who likes to be with people. Right? So maybe you see your meaning, you experience meaning through supporting the people who work with you or for you or the ones you work for. So you're helping a colleague on a daily basis. Today, for example, I got on the phone and I talked to somebody who actually needed some help. And I thought, well, what can I do? This is not my area. But then I remembered, there's this other friend of mine who actually does know something about this. Let me connect them. Right? That made my day. And what did it take? 5 minutes? But so we've got to figure out, what is it that makes us feel good? Is it people? Is it accomplishment? Is it learning? Is it creativity? A lot of people feel pretty good about themselves when they fixed a broken system or process. That's creativity. Yep. So what is it? That's why I talk about self-awareness. Well, we got to know how we're wired. What drives us? And too many of us just don't spend enough time thinking about it. We're busy.
And then we're miserable.
And then we're miserable. And we don't even know why.
So you talk about purpose, but you also talk about hope.
Yeah.
You talk about finding strength and hope. And you believe fundamentally we can learn to be optimistic people.
I do.
I think there are people that wonder sometimes, but you say banishing pessimism is something we can work on. How do you continually tap that power of optimism?
Yeah, yeah. It's a good question, and I will be honest with you, it's not always easy.
Mm.
Um, I talked earlier about we're not really born one way or another, but when it comes to optimism and pessimism, some psychologists do believe that we are born with a little bit of a tendency in one direction or the other, right? Not a dramatic sort of pendulum swing, but a little bit of a tendency, right? And if you happen to be one of those people who's a little bit glass half empty, it takes effort to look at that glass and tell yourself, "Hey, it's half full." There's plenty of water in there for me, right? We have to actually give ourselves an opportunity every single day to think about what the future could be. And I don't mean the grandiose future. I mean this afternoon, tomorrow. How can I make this afternoon better for myself, my employees, the people around me? What can I do that will prepare us for this big thing we're doing tomorrow? That's hope. That's optimism. And hope can be a very, very practical thing. It's a notion that something could be better than it is today, right? It's a sense of self-worth and efficacy. I can do something to make that happen, right? And it's a willingness to bring other people into that process. And a lot of people don't. A lot of people are scared to bring people into the process of hoping and creating a better future. I think we've got to lighten up on ourselves a little bit and give ourselves a little bit of leeway to experiment, to practice, to try, to dream a little bit and let people know we are.
Yeah. Well, I could not agree with you more. The first thing that comes to my mind though is burnout.
Yes.
There's so many people that are burned out now, especially with the pandemic and what's happening. People are talking about leaving their jobs, all that stuff. How do well, first of all, how do you counteract that, and how do you have hope in that environment?
Yeah, chronic stress and burnout are dangerous. They are really dangerous. They affect us physically. I mean, we all know this, but let me just say it. They affect us physically pretty dramatically, even to the point of causing very severe illnesses. They affect us psychologically, to the point that you become sometimes sad, even depressed, and they affect our relationships. Right, stress and burnout. And I do believe that we are in one of those moments in history where we need to pay attention to how we're feeling when it comes to stress and burnout. There are an awful lot of burned out people right now. I've talked to them. I've seen them. I've been consulting to them. I've even experienced it myself a little bit during the pandemic. Many of us have been either working really, really hard or not working at all. Either one of those extremes is not good for us, okay? And I don't think we can magically make this go away. I think we've got to take steps toward a more healthy life and a more healthy working life as well. A lot of people are thinking about quitting their jobs. In the United States, I know there are probably people dialing in from all over the place. In the United States, we've got a very strong labor market for employees right now, and we have some options. And there are a lot of people thinking about changing their jobs, whether they are, frontline retail or frontline, medical, or whether they are, IT or managerial or functional. Many, many people are thinking about leaving because we've had time to think during the pandemic and we've had time to really reflect on what's important to us,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
We've been faced with the possibility of illness and death, and many people have experienced illness and deaths in their families and their friends circles. And that really kind of is a wake up call, right? So people are thinking, well, I'm in this dead end job. What am I doing here? Or, that manager I've got is never going to get any better. Or, you know what, this company, I'm not on board with the values. I'm just not, and I'm finally willing to admit it, right? Those are real drivers that could get you up out of your seat and out the door. And I would caution everyone who may be thinking about that to slow it down just a little bit. Okay, slow it down. Do some more reflection and think about what is it about your job now and your workplace and your company that is actually bothering you, right? Try to get specific, because when we're burned out or stressed to the max, everything looks dark and you
Mhm.
kind of spiral down, and before you know it, you can't even turn around with seeing something you don't like, when in reality that's not how it is. There are probably a few things that really bother you, and you need to know what they are, and then ask yourself, is there a way to fix this? Right? I mean, there may be, not always, but there may be.
Right.
um, moving to a different department, for example, or a different part of your company. There are a lot of opportunities right now in many, many sectors and many industry. And most importantly, if you do decide this is untenable, this job, it's not going to get me anywhere, I'm pretty miserable, fine. But then you need to do some more reflection and think about, what do you actually want? Because if you don't know what you're seeking and what you're going for, chances are you're going to end up in the same type of situation, or maybe even worse. We got to be running towards something as much as we're running away from something.
I think that's a great way of putting it. And you also, the other thing that I think we have to think about, and you talk about this in your book, is friendships.
Yeah.
I mean, do you have, I mean, you talk about purpose, you talk about hope, but you also say we got to have friendships at work, right? We have a deep human need to belong.
Mm-hmm. We
Um, so, but in this virtual environment, do you think that those friendships have been harder to make? Um, you know, we're not interacting with people face to face. I mean, we are seeing them, but is it harder to, create friendships in our jobs today? And does that have something to do with this whole notion of, leaving our jobs, burnout, and all that good stuff?
Yeah, I think you're right. I do think it's harder, and the research bears this out. It is harder to build real, authentic, meaningful relationships in the virtual environment. It is harder. It's harder to build trust. It takes longer to build trust. But there's some things we can do. One of the things that we know about virtual work is that for some reason we get very task oriented when we're on video or on the phone or some other email, computer connection, etc. And we need to actually take a step back from that and build into our work processes opportunities for just like hanging out, just talking. Right.
Mm.
Don't start that meeting right away with a check-in about the project and where are we on this or that. Start a check-in, well, like, hey, how is everybody? Let's go around the circle and talk for a second. So what we've learned, not just in the pandemic, but over the last 10 years or so, is that real relationships can be built in the virtual environment, but it takes more effort, and it takes management's willingness to give the time to it. Otherwise, it's not going to happen.
Mm.
And yes, I think people burn out without relationships. Absolutely, categorically. Yes, we are social beings. We want to be around people. It's been really hard to be isolated. Even, you may not know this, Walt, about me, but even for the introverts among us, like me, there's been a lot of isolation.
Introverts? Are you kidding me? Come
Yeah.
on.
Oh, no, I am full on. Yep. Yep.
It's funny you talk about that, though. I'm on the board of directors of a company that, before our board meetings every quarter, we meet with 5 or 6 employees that they fly in throughout the world, and we do it with a wine dinner. And so that, in the COVID environment, we haven't been able to do that, but the company has sent us wine that we drink with employees from throughout the world. And actually, now we have more opportunities to meet people from, Australia that wouldn't fly into the corporate headquarters, or Germany and the like, because we can do it virtually, and we do it over wine. And
Yep.
in that regard, we've created, if you will, an atmosphere to create better friendships, or perhaps widen the net of people that we get to know. So
That's
You
awesome.
know, there's pluses, I guess, right?
Well, there's pluses, but that story is perfect because you and the company made an effort to make it happen.
Yeah,
Other companies that I know of just gave up on, well, we can't have lunches together anymore, so we're not. You, on the other hand, and this company made sure that it happened. It takes effort, it takes time, and it takes effort, but we can do it. We really can.
absolutely, we can. I agree with you. Although it is harder.
It's hard.
It's like anything, you have to be intentional about it. So, last two questions. Um, I think effective leaders not only have the ability to think big and have a big, have vision, but I also think that the most effective leaders show that they can, if you will, think small or do little things for other people to show that they care.
Hmm.
Um, I think sometimes all it takes is for a leader to do something that perhaps seems small, but mushrooms into something big because it really makes a difference in somebody's life.
Yeah.
And you're a people person. I think you get that. Do you have practices, or have you seen other leaders do things, little things, that actually maybe grow into big things? Maybe they don't, but they're really, really effective in terms of leading other people because they do these little things. Have you seen anything like that?
I have. I love that question, and I love the thinking you're doing about this. Let me start with appreciating people. When you ask people why they're unhappy at work, one of the first answers you usually get is, "I'm not appreciated here. I'm not recognized. I'm not appreciated." So you're talking about little things. How about just saying thank you?
Mm, yeah.
And meaning it, right? Maybe it's on a Zoom call. Maybe you're picking up the phone in the middle of the day and just out of the blue calling somebody up and say, "You know what? I saw what you did. Thank you. Thank you." It means so much to people. So that's one. Appreciate people. Number two, when you are connecting with people, for crying out loud, act like you care. If you're
Mm,
going to ask somebody how they are, wait for the answer. you know and
yep.
if the answer feels kind of canned, slow down and say, "No, really, how are you? I really want to know." That will be remembered. That will absolutely be remembered. I remember one guy I worked with for a while. He did this really small thing that actually transformed his company. This was a CEO, very powerful guy, a really good CEO, good leader, but man, did he have his moods. Okay, this guy's kind of up and down, and he colored, literally colored these smiley faces, and some were smiley and some were not smiley and some were straight across, and he'd hang them on his doorknob of his office, right? So it became a kind of a joke, like, "Uh-oh, there's no smiley face here," right? And what it did was humanize the guy. It humanized him, right? And everybody's joking about, I'll call him Brent. Okay, so Brent's happy today. You can go ask for that thing, or you better stay away from Brent today, or they'd come up to him and say, "I'm not coming near you today, buddy." And what happened in the company was so interesting. This happened really far away from that corporate office. People started being more vulnerable with how they were feeling with each other because he set the tone. It's okay to have a bad day. It's okay to have a good day. Let's just make sure we communicate where we are to people so they know how to manage us, how to deal with us.
I love that. I love that. So I do think that at least telling people where you are and allowing them to know that you don't have a smiley face on today is probably a good idea. Giving them the heads up before they come in.
Yep.
So last question. I'm curious what you're most grateful for.
Oh, wow. What am I most grateful for? Whew. That's actually a kind of emotional question coming out of this pandemic.
Mm,
I am grateful for a lot of things. I am really, really grateful that in many parts of the world we're starting to turn the corner. I am really grateful that in those parts of the world that we're starting to turn the corner, we're starting to think about the rest of the world and figuring out ways to get vaccine, get supplies, that sort of thing. I'm grateful for my family. I mean, a lot of people have lost people. We've had many people in my family get sick this year, very sick. I'm really grateful that we're all here. And then I'll add a really fun one because I'm looking at them right now. I'm really grateful for my dogs. I love them. They make me happy.
I think some days it's just a matter of getting up and saying what you're grateful for before you, slog into the day, because we forget about it. And then unfortunately, all the difficult things kind of drag us down. It's a good practice to think about every morning. What am I grateful for? And that's really great. And I'm glad that your dogs aren't barking in the background, though.
Me too.
I've been on a number of these Zoom calls where they have been.
I know, me too.
Not with you, but with other people. Annie, I have to just tell you, it's been absolutely awesome to have you on today. Thank you so much for being on. And I'd like to thank everybody who's tuned in for tuning in. It's been awesome. I've learned a lot today. And what I have learned is that you got to be optimistic. You've got to, be intentional about being purposeful in the things that you do. And you can be in the warehouse business and still think about that, right? So if you'd like to learn more about Annie's work, check her out. Check her website out at anniemckee.com. And of course, if you want to find out more about me or Transfluence, it's waltrakowicz.com. And also keep an eye out. We're doing this on roughly a monthly basis right now. And we've had some terrific leaders on. And so look out for notifications for future live streams. And I'd just like to end by encouraging all of you to find a way to have a positive influence on those around you each and every day. Thank you so much, Annie. Appreciate all your time, your graciousness being on, and your smiling face.
Thank you so much. It was great.
Thanks, everybody. Until the next time.